Imibhikisho isiyaba insakavukela eNingizimu Afrika, imiphakathi ibhikishela ugesi, amanzi, imisebenzi kanye nokunye. Loku sekwenze ukuba lelizwe libizwe nge-protest capital of the world. Kungabe yini eyenza lokhu? Kungenziwani ukuthi sikugweme lokhu? Eminye yemibuzoesizobe siyidinginga namhlanje ohlelweni i-Asikhulume Let's Talk mbukeli nolungu ngqa phambili. Seloku lelizwe lathola inkululeko eminyakweni esicishe ibe ngama-30 edlule. Public protests of either service delivery, protests against undemocratic laws have become an integral part of the society. Ngokwezibalo zango-2018, the South African Human Rights Commission pamphlet on community protests, imibhikisho ebakhona eNingizimu Afrika ilinganiselwa esibalweni esingaphezu kweyinkulungwane eziyi-13 namakhulu amahlanu, 13,500 ngonyaka. Umthelela walokhu ukushiswa kwezakhiwo ezisiza imiphakathi njengezempilo, izikole kanye nezinye. Kanti futhi people have died during protests. Sikubingelele sikwamukela ohlelweni i-Asikhulume Let's Talk mbukeli igama lami ngingubongiwe umakhumalo wakwazwane. Sikhumbuze ke mbukela ukuthi ningaba ingxenye lolu hlelo ngokusishayela ucingo sizwe umbuzo noma umbono wakho. Inombolo zethu zocingo 011-7140677 noma 011-7140678. Kanti ungabuye futhi usithole emakhasini ethu okuxhumana ku Twitter @SABC Izindaba kanye na ku Facebook SABC Izindaba. Ukuze kubelula ke mbukeli sicela uqale ngo#asikhulume #SABC News bese ubhala ke umbuzo noma umbono wakho. Asikhulume. Mbukela esikhathini esiningi imiphakathi ibonakala ivala imigwaqo ngamatshe, ishisa amathayi, kwesinye isikhathi ishaya izimoto ezidlulayo, ivimbele nabanye emsebenzini. Kuvalwe izitolo uma ubhikishela ukunganeliseki ngendlela uhulumeni enza ngayo ukuletha izidingo zawo. Ukubhikisha ke kuyilungelo labantu, kodwa lokhu umthethosisekelo uthi akwenziwe ngokuthula, kungaxhashazwa amalungelo abanye abantu uma kwenziwa. Ingabe ukubhikisha iyona indlela efanele ukudlulisa ikhalo nokuzwakalisa ukungeneliseki mbukeli? Intatheli yohlelo ulinde kuhle simelane uhlanganisele lo mbiko.
Kusukela iNingizimu Afrika isengaphansi kohulumeni wobandlululo, kwaze kwafika lapho sekubusa uhulumeni wentando yeningi, imibhikisho ilokho iqhubeke njalo, ihlukene, eminye yokuntuleka kwezidingo nqangi, ukubulawa kwabesifazane, ukubhidlanga kwezidakamizwa nokunye.
We've seen quite a rise in protest in South Africa, quite a high number of protests in South Africa, and 80% of those protests are service delivery protests.
I think communities find that local leadership is often inaccessible to them, or in trying to raise particular concerns, for example, access to housing or access to basic services or things of that nature. Political leaders are either unable to take forward what communities are asking for or unwilling. There just seems to be a lack of political will.
Ingabe ukubhikisha iyona ndlela efanele ukudlulisa izikhalo nokuzwakalisa ukunganeliseki, kanti futhi le mbhikisho iyasiza yini ukuthi ubulungiswa benzeke?
During the apartheid time, one of the ways for state government to listen, it is through protest. So there's a culture of protest all over the world, especially in democratic countries.
We've seen quite a lot of time in how mass protests and community service, community protest and service delivery protests have managed to get an end result that is positive.
Noma ilungelo lokuhlanganyela kanye nokubhikisha ngokuthula liqinisekiwe kumthethosisekelo wakulelizwe, imibhikisho eminingi ivamise ukuba nodlame.
Stats are showing that more and more people are dying in protests, and that is sometimes due to excessive use of force by the police.
Mbukeli, yini engenziwa ukuqinisekisa ukuthi usizo kanye nezidingo nqangi ziyafinyelela kubantu ngaphandle kokuchitheka kwegazi nokucekelelwa phansi kwengqalasizinda?
Sibonge intatheli yohlelo ulindo kuhle simelane ukudingida kabanzi ngalokho asamukele ihambile zethu mbukelo usolwazi unsekelelo breakfast nongumqondisi we-Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution eNelson Mandela University. Siphinde samukele uDokotela Trevor Ngwane, the founding leader of the Anti-Privatization Forum and the Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee, kanye no Omhle Ntshingila obuya kwinhlangano i-Right to Protest. Nginamukele nonke ohlelo lingizoqala ngawe Dr. Ngwane. Are we really the protest capital of the world?
Ngiyabonga ukuthi ngibele amakhumalo. Yebo, kushuthi imibhikisho ayiminingi kakhulu eSouth Africa futhi iyathusa. Ukuthi nje amanye amazwe njengo Arab Spring, go Tunisia kwenzeka ngesikhathi esisodwa esincane ibe mkhulu ukudlula lokho esikwenzayo. Kanti ethu inhlaka yawuthatha ungapha futhi sekuyiminyaka kwenzeka. Cishe khona ku right ukuthi siyi protest capital. Yeah.
Omuhle, one of the things that we know about your organization is that you study these particular protests, and kukhona izinto esiyibonayo over time ngalama protests abantu mebebhikisha. I wonder what are the trends that you've observed?
So the trends that we are busy grappling now is looking at how there's been such a rise in community protests, particularly service delivery protests, and in how that has resulted in a lot of also unnecessary arrests during these protests, and also the death of bystanders, especially minor bystanders, children during these protests. And the trend that we've also noticed is that these protests don't necessarily just happen out of the blue. It's after long engagements with local governments, with councillors, MECs, and it's only then when communities are not responded to and are left in a state of neglect that they resort to all forms of protest.
Ngizoza kuwe Dokotela Breakfast in just a moment, but ngizocela ukuthi Dokotela Ngwane sikhuluma ngalento ngoba uthinta i-community, imiphakathi. We are seeing them protesting, and it does look like for them that's the last resort, is it?
Khona kunjalo ngoba angithi ngaphambi kokuthi abantu ba protest baqale baye ku councillor, baye ku ward committee, thola ukuthi ababalaleli babashaya indiva bagcina sebethi hayi ngcono simasha. Nakhona njengoba besho unkosazana mabe masha bafaka imemorandum, bona bayithatha imemorandum bayifaka ku-dustbin. Mase buya kwesibili sekuthanda ukushisa ke manje angithi yabo sekubizwa amaphoyisa aseshaya ngama-rubber bullet sekuthiwa hayi it's a violent protest. Kanti abantu abahlulekayo abaphathi ngoba abenzi lokhu okucelwa umphakathi.
Dokotela Breakfast, one of the things that is very clear here is that from i-report kaLindo Kuhle uyabona ukuthi kade kwaqala ukubhikishwa eSouth Africa. Now in 2023, there are people who are saying protests have no place in a modern democracy. In fact, things should be discussed and people should not be protesting. Do protests still have a space or a place in modern day democracy?
Because we need to hear views abanye abantu outside the state. I-protests yi-expression of ungonwabi kwabantu. Abantu bane needs, and kana needs zabantu zingekho met, lonto leyo create a scope for social conflict, but also lack of irresponsiveness of politicians ne public officials ziyakwazi unnecessitate into bangaba kubekho i-protest. So I think i-protest is justifiable because xa abantu be frustrated, no frustration, lead to aggression.
Sometimes, got the Dokotela Breakfast, we see this composition, which some have said is a problem. Ukuthi a local government level, for example, kwamasipala abakwazi ukuthi basolve inkinga probably province noma national engakwazi ukuthi solve lezi inkinga. But now municipalities are in the cold face. What do they do?
Yes, because a local government is front line of a service. A delivery because it's closer to ebantwini, so sisifie esibalekile. But the problem ke into bangaba sometimes abantu kwi-positions of power ababekwa ngaphana on merit, so bangakwazi ke ngoku ukurenderisha i-services of which loo nto leyo ke ngoku i-create scope bangaba kubekho i-conflict between i-citizens kunye ne-local authorities.
Omuhle, I see you nodding.
And what he's talking about for me is very true, because there should be a constant communication with the 3 tiers of government, especially when it comes to bringing service delivery. But also in managing the type of protest that we see today, it's their responsibility to create civic space for people to voice out their dissents. Iy'khalo zabo zizwakale emphakathini nokuthi zizwe abantu ababaholayo. It shouldn't be just, a protest shouldn't just be one-sided. It should be a space where uhulumeni uyakwazi ukuhlala phansi nomphakathi wakhe ezwe ukuthi, okay, these are the sorts of challenges that are on the ground. How best can we take it forward? The reason why local municipality eventually becomes on the cold front is because they constantly are not communicating with their community and saying, this is what province is saying, this is what national is saying. If kuyalandelwa ama-IDP kuhlala phansi kuba nembizo with the community, I think the type of protest would be seen with violent protest would be less in communities.
So Omuhle, ngizofuna ukuthi when we all come back we talk about this ngoba there appears to be a lack of communication. Is it because bayasaba or is it because there are other reasons that we may not know? Mbukeli, siyabuya khona manje. Mbukeli, siphinde futhi sikwamukele sisakhuluma ngokuteleka kanye nokuthi can we do it in a non-violent way? Kwenzakalani uma uhulumeni engasondeli kubantu bakhe? In fact, because we've seen amanye ama-protests eba very violent ngendlela eyisimanga kanti kuze kube futhi kudlule nabantu emhlabeni. Kodwa sisakhuluma nehambeli zethu. Dr. Ngwane, I'm going to get straight to the point. Uma kuthiwa uhulumeni akasondele ebantwini, is it because uhulumeni yabasaba abantu abaholayo noma kukhona okunye esingakubona?
Manje ke kuhle ukuthi le ndaba sibheke ngeso elibanzi. Ngoba kwesinye isikhathi angithi siyezwa manje cishe nawo khona manje kuthiwa hayi local government athi hayi province athi kahle eSouth Africa asikhumbule ukuthi iapartheid kwakuyisimo sama-capitalist. Kushuthi isimo sohlohla kwesakhe kuncelwa igazi lomsebenzi. Manje ngebhadi masengena umuntu omnyama sathola inkululeko, leyo system ye-capitalism iyaqhubeka. Okusho ukuthi lo hulumeni khona manje uphethwe i-ANC wama-capitalist. Kushuthi wona wenzele ukuthi abanothile banothe kakhulu, abempofu kakhulu. Okusho ukuthi thina fanele sibheke singathi structurally yini umsuka wendaba. Umsuka ukuthi lelizwe lakhelwe ukuncela igazi abasebenzi, alakhelwanga ngempela le democracy esikhuluma ngayo. Yingakho mina ngibona sengathi nawo ama-protest ngazi ukuthi indaba ayikho phezulu, angithi fanele again agxile ukuthi yini umnyombo, yini umthombo, yini umsuka, i-capitalism.
Dr. Breakfast uyavuma? Ngibona uyahleka.
Yes, ngiyavuma msazi, because as a protest zikhozwa i-class struggle between abantu abanento nabantu abangenanto. But I think uProfessor Ngwana into ayithethayo into bangaba as protest as leadishi to a total overhaul of the system, because ingxaki as a situ prof into bangaba means of production sikwizandla of abantu abambalwa. I mean, talking about into bangaba apartheid, the system of exploitation of working class. So even post 1994, siyabona baba abantu they are continuing selling labor power in exchange for income, but imali abayipayayo So I agree with the analysis, but I think maybe just to expand on the argument, as I would say, the reason why as the protest zinga lidishi to a change for the better, sometimes the abantu aba engage kwezi protest abantu abangena zawuthi class consciousness. Yabona ngabantu abanomsindo nje uba ngaba amanzi awekho, indlela azikho, ijobs azikho, but abana consciousness of a class in terms of intoni into abafuna ukuyi-achieve out of as protest.
Omuhle abantu batelekela, for example, in some cases amanzi kodwa bashisa community hall. Kuhlangana kanjani lokho?
Kuyakwenzeke lokho sikubona kwenzeka emphakathini, and the reasoning behind it most of the time, well, the analysis even from our researchers is that if isikhalo sabantu singazwakali at some point, and in how also the state responds in violence, it's a byproduct that communities will also respond the same way. And it's not, we're not saying as the right to protest we condone arson or public violence, but it's just an analysis of saying that the type of violence that the state has created, as my two colleagues have talked about, creating a state of capitalism, division and inequality. But that division and inequality has been enforced through violence, and the communities have responded the same. And we only see governments coming down to communities when there's something that has been burnt down. When they had an opportunity to come and engage and intervene, endabeni zokulungisa amanzi, izindlu, imigaqo, but it had to take a community to burn down an important structure, be it a school, a community hall, or a library, for there to be a response and their needs to be met. So I think it's just, in a way, communities are also responding to the type of violence that they are experiencing every day, with the inequality and the poverty that they are going through as well.
Dr. Ngwane, does it make it right, though, ukuthi uma uteleka ushise the very thing that is helping the community, and in some instances we see it resulting in a loss of jobs, or mhlambe le mali bebethi beyifunela lokho izogcina isisetshenziswa ukuthi kulungiswe lokho?
Singathi ngesingisi those are acts of desperation. Yeah. So thina into efanele siyilwele is not shortcut solution. Yeah, fanele sibe ne broad long-term view. Yeah. So it's 30 years now of protest. Kodwa akulungi, angithi yabo. Yeah. And abantu bayazi ukuthi abantu abaphethe obabu Ramaphosa, ama-billionaire, the first black billionaires of South Africa, kwaba oSaki Macozoma, oChoko Sqwale, amalunga aqavile ANC. Okusho ukuthi singathi phecelezi kukhona nokuthi abantu bayadayiswa kwathiwa hayi sizoshaya sengathi nikhululekile kodwa nina nizoqhubeka ukuthi nincelwe igazi. Manje mina bengithi ngiyeza noba ku-breakfast uyavuma, bengithi asishaye impela itoyitoyi kodwa asizameni amaqhinga ukuthi singalokho sitoyitoya kuze kube nguna phakathi, sithole isolution esingathi a vision of alternatives. Sishintsha kanjani le system? Ngikhumbula kahle masilone apartheid kwakuthiwa we must change the system. Manje abantu abasathi has change the system. Bathini? Kwakuthiwa power to the working class. Abantu bathini? But power to who? So power to the working class, power to the poor, change the capitalist system. Akususwe labantu abasebenzela izisu zabo kungene abantu abazosebenzela umphakathi.
And Dr. Breakfast, very briefly, break. One of the things, though, that is very clear is that it looks like our communities are disconnected from these amenities. I don't know if that's the correct kind of reading.
Yes, Msazi. At local government level, we can do IDP, which is a 5-year strategic plan. And then the baby of the IDP is the LED. Now, the problem is that as the IDPs, municipalities as Nancy, zenzwa the politicians, okay, zenzwa the public officials, without a knowledge of its citizens of ezondawo. Now, if we can kwenziwa policies without involvement of abantu, lonto leyo create problems. Hence, ndifuna uconfirm le argument yakho that ikhona disjuncture between the communities kunye kwakhona ne leaders.
So ngifuna ukuthi masibuye from the break, then we look at solutions. Ngoba ngiyakhumbula mina mangikhula, for example, bekukhona into ababiza ama street committees where abantu would talk. So does that go, do things go back to that level? Noma senzani? Mbukeli akasethi shelele idolo. Siyabuya. Mbukeli sesiphetha ake sibheke isobululo zalenkinga nokuthi senze njani njengoba sekukhala ngokuthi uma kutelekwa ake kube ne-vision that looks into the future. Dokotela Ngwane, ngizoqala ngawe, kuba iziphi isobululo wena oyibonayo ukuthi zingayigwema lenkinga?
Uyabona Makhumalo, kuba kuthiwa i-ANC iclub yebhola bezizothi ake irelegate iyoshawa umoya iyojima. So ngibona sengathi ngonyaka ozayo njengoba kuza ama-election kungakuhle ukuthi abantu basebenzise ivote labo ke bakhiphe abantu abahlulekile bazame ukufaka abanye. Futhi ke yithuba ngoba manje ama-independent ney'nhlangano zomphakathi seyizovunyelwa ukuthi zirane for i-national election. So ke into efanele ibhekwe leyo. Okwesibili, mhlawumbe masenza kanjalo abantu, we must fight for power. Uyabona mawuzovotela umuntu umnike ipower akuhle. Thatha ipower. Njengakudala sasinama street committee, sinama civic, ama-union aye strong esebenzela engasidayisa ngithi yabo bese sishintshe le system, sifake i-system ezosenzela abantu engathi mina phecelezi i-socialism.
Interesting. Omuhle, very briefly, what becomes your solutions?
I think there needs to be a constant communication with communities about their issues and their challenges. But this will not eliminate the right to protest. The right to protest is still within the hands of the people, and people have the right to practice their constitutional right to protest without any fear of intimidation, a fear of also being pressed by the judiciary, the police, or the government in any way. And I truly do believe that government needs to relook at how they do crowd management, especially in using lethal weaponry during protests that have killed many and have resulted to a lot of injuries of protesters in the process. So we are looking at public order policing to find better ways of policing during protest action.
And one day I do hope we get to talk about that, because some of their own standing orders have been found to be challenging there. But ngizoza kuwe Dokotela Breakfast, ubona kuyini wena izisombululo zalenkinga?
I think sisibongiwe into yokuqala into bangaba we must do away with the application of neoliberalism, because if you look at the government wethu unalento yoku outsourcer. I-outsourcing ke kumi privatization of services. Lilento create scope for urhwaphilizo apho ufumanise kubaba abantu abanikezela inkonzo because bane interest lento bayenzayo, but because bafuna ukwenza i-profit. So ingxaki lonto leyo. So we need i-state esizawulidisha i-development, but kuze ukwazi uyenza lonto leyo funeka uappointe abantu kwindawo ezi-right on merit, and also communities be involved with policies as a formulator of government, because zizinto efuneka zibenefite bona.
And one thing I know is that this is a conversation we'll have again as we look closer to the elections. You've already alluded to the elections, Dokotela Ngwane, but definitely there's a lot to be said about this one. Mbukeli, sibonge singqongqoze kuwe ngokuhlanganyela nathi nehambeli zethu. Usolwazi unsekelelo Breakfast ongumqondisi we-Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at Nelson Mandela University. Siphinde saba no Dokotela Trevor Ngwane, the founding leader of the Anti-Privatization Forum and the Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee, no omuhle no buya kwinhlangano i-Right to Protest. Asethembeke mbukeli ukuthi ingxoxo isazoqhubeka emakhasini okuxhumana. Ubongiwe uMakhumalo wakwazwane nethimba le-Asikhulume. Uthi nisale kahle, ayixabene.